In the previous lecture, I talked about the decision-making process and talked about the 5 different steps that we go through. First, we understand we have a need or we have a problem, something's missing. Then we do a search for information to help us solve that problem. We evaluate the different alternatives. We decide on which product we want to buy. And then we look at that post-purchase decision-making to kind of see how well our decision-making process worked. Now, if you think about it, you're going to see that you do not do every one of those steps for every type of purchase that you buy. For example, you walk in the store just to get a loaf of bread, you're not really going to search for a lot of information. You know the product you want to buy, you know which brand of bread you're going to buy, you purchase it, you put it in the cart, and you check out. So there's not a lot of evidence about how that decision-making process works. So what that looks at, though, is that because of why you're buying the product, because of the importance of the product, you kind of skip a couple of those steps and you go straight from I need bread to here's what I'm going to buy. So let's look at those. From research, we know that consumers buy products for very different reasons. And research also tells us that we can break all of the different purchases and purchase decisions down into 3 separate groups. We have habitual buying decisions, limited buying decisions, and extended buying decisions. And what this means is basically it all depends on the level of involvement that we have with the product, the level of risk, and where, for example, low involvement and low risk, we're looking at things we just buy on a constant basis, such as bread, milk, staple type products that we purchase. And then with high involvement, high risk, we're looking at things such as, buying a new car, houses, situations like this. So each one of these is very different, and let's look at each one of them in turn. So how much time do you put into buying ketchup? Probably not much. You probably have a favorite brand that you buy, and you probably buy it every time that you need it. And these type of decisions we call basically habitual buying decisions. There's really low financial investment. There's very little risk if you buy the wrong thing. We are only going to be using our internal information search. I mean, it's hard to imagine that we go online to research ketchup, which one we want to buy. And generally, we are going to consider one alternative. That's all we're going to think about. It's kind of a muscle memory kind of thing where we go in, okay, I buy Heinz ketchup, I put it in a cart, and I move on. So these type of decisions, again, what a marketer has to do is, marketer has to get you in the first time. They have to get you to understand what the value of their product is, and they have to get you buying their product on a repeat basis, and then it becomes a habit. Oftentimes we can do that with promotional efforts, to where you're always having some type of promotional deal at the beginning, and then you're moving into it and it just becomes second nature. The hard part about existing products, though, is that you may be one of those that are buying Heinz ketchup on a habitual basis. You buy it every single time. You don't need a promotion, don't need anything else. But others are in different phases. They haven't got to that point to where they are now buying a specific brand on a constant basis every time. So if I can throw promotions at them, well, those that are constantly buying it now, they are going to get the promotion as well. So I kind of leave a little money on the table. So balancing it, though, is trying to get customers to move from one brand to another. It gets tricky in these cases. But not all products are like ketchup or bread or milk. A lot of them we want to think about a little bit more in depth. Think about the last time you were in a grocery store buying groceries and you went to either the snack aisle or the chip aisle. How much time did it take you to decide what you wanted to buy? Oftentimes you may have your standard bag of chips that you always go with, but sometimes you're in the mood for something else. And it's even worse on the cookie aisle. There's so many different choices. Well, which one are you going to choose? Here, again, you're not going to put a lot of effort. You're not going to talk to friends, hey, what kind of cookie is going to appeal to my appetite right now? Often it's, again, internal search that you're using. And here you're going to consider probably just a few alternatives. And there's not a lot of involvement that it's in this. There's not a lot of risk because it's low cost. So again, you're going to spend a little bit more time, But again, it's going to be the same thing, internal search and looking over a couple of options, and that's it. But you're putting a little bit more effort into it. With extended buying decisions, here you are looking for as much information as you possibly can. You're going as deep as you possibly can until that point to where you feel comfortable about knowing the product category or have all the information you need to be able to buy a decision to buy the product. And again, generally here, there's high loss potential, not only in terms of money, but it could be other issues. And I think a couple of weeks ago I talked about when you had to buy a medicine for your child. Again, there's high loss potential. You're putting a little bit more effort into it. You're going to look over as many alternatives as you possibly can. If you think about a house, you're going to look at a lot of different houses before you make that decision. So you're going to look through it, and it's just a little bit more depth that you're going through. Here is where we are actually using every single stage of the decision-making process that we talked about in the first lecture. So putting all this together, again, if we look at the extensive decision making, again, we use every single step. We go through the need recognition, information search, evaluate all the alternatives, purchase decision, and post-purchase evaluation. But for the limited, if we go into the middle set of arrows, again, we will generally skip that information search. We don't have to do any more research on it. We're just going to look at the different alternatives we already know about. We then make the purchase, and we do some level of post-purchase evaluation, although not much in this case. Routine, on the other hand, which is the gray arrow on all the way on the outside, we skip information search, we skip evaluation of all the alternatives, and we go straight to purchase. Again, we know exactly what we're going to buy, we grab it, and again here, unless something changes, unless something happens with the quality of a product, let's say, we don't even do much post-purchase evaluations. So what effect can marketers have on all this decision-making processes? Well, one, we can change the decision heuristics. Oftentimes we can change what's important. And for example, you may look at a set of attributes that you think are important, but if you see enough advertisements, if you hear enough people talking about, well, you know what, the graphic processor in that computer is really not the big thing that you want to worry about because they're all good. It's the memory. And all of a sudden you may start thinking about memory a little bit more, or you may think about the the weight of the laptop or whatever it's going to be. So again, we can alter your heuristics. We can alter what you think about. We can also do another thing. We can also do what we call decision framing. And here, one of the best examples, most of you may not have been to this stage yet, but when you get ready to buy a house, oftentimes a real estate agent is going to show you a series of houses that you either you have picked out or they have picked out for you, giving your criteria. And they'll show you one house that you look at and go, yeah, there's no way. That place needs a lot of work. It's not in a good neighborhood. It's just, we're never living there. We're not going to buy it. Then they may take you to another house. I mean, this house is going to be just perfect, ideal. I mean, everything is just glistening and gloss and perfect, but it's too expensive. And then they take you to the house they really want you to buy, or the set of houses that they want you to buy. And here they will basically put you in houses that are in your price range, kind of sometimes in your many of the criteria that you have. They may not be perfect, but because they have shown you a weak house and they've showed you a very strong house, that third house, I guess it's kind of like the Goldilocks theory, it's just right for you. And you frame how you look at that house based on the others that you've seen. Some of the other things that marketers can do is alter and change the number of choices that you have. There was an experiment conducted years ago where a couple of researchers set up a jam tasting booth right outside the entrance to a grocery store. And every few hours they would kind of switch between offering 24 flavors of jams and offering 6 flavors of jams. And what they wanted to know is which assortment attracted more people to stop and taste the jam. But they had one more thing they wanted to find out. Which assortment led to higher sales inside the store. So they observed people that would stop by, for example, when they had offering 24 flavors of jams, and they would stop by the booth and they would taste, and then they were kind of being watched as they moved through the store, and they went down the jam aisle, and they were looking at, how many stopped and made a purchase of jams. They did the exact same thing with those that had, when there was only 6 options. Well, of course, what they found is that when there were 24 varieties, about 60% of the people entering the store stopped. When there were only 6 options available, only about 40% of people stopped. However, the interesting part is that of those that were presented with 24 options, only 3 purchased. When they went inside the store, only 3 basically made a buy. But 30% of those, when there were only 6 options, made a buy. So why is that? One, the presence of so many different flavors, so many different options, it becomes a little cognitively overwhelming. So we look at it and we go, gosh, I just can't make up my mind. I'll do it later. But when there's only 6, it's really simple to go through and make a decision about which one that I want to buy. So oftentimes we can change. More choice is not always the best choice. All right, so that's lecture 13.2 for the week. There's one more coming, and hopefully on this one I'll make sure and get the recordings turned on so I don't have to redo it a second time like I'm doing these. All right, look forward to that.